G'day everyone, welcome back to another edition of Guvs Hero Review videos. Today we are going to be taking a look at the 5-star legendary red hero, Inferno, the Cultist of Flame. Inferno, we saw there, is available for summons from the Raiders of the Wasteland Challenge Event portal, which comes around once every 16 weeks. It is on a 4-weekly time slot in the calendar, but it does rotate with 3 other events. So we do have a 4 events, 4-weekly occurrence, so it's a 16-weekly event. Inferno himself was the last hero added to the Raiders family at the time of this recording. He was introduced about a year ago now, in July 2023, over 3 years after the event was originally released in April 2020. The portal odds, we can take a quick look at them. So we've got a 1% chance for a featured event hero and a 0.6% chance for an unfeatured event hero. To put that in perspective, across 100 summons, if you were to do those summons in this portal, you would have an 80% probability of getting any of the 5-star heroes, a 63.4% probability of getting a featured hero, and a 45% chance of getting a unfeatured hero. If we drill down onto a specific hero level, we do have a 39.4% probability of getting a specific featured hero, but just a 13.9% probability of getting a specific unfeatured event legendary hero. With that final number, that'll drop off further if more heroes get added into the portal over time. Let's just pause real quick and jump across and we can take a look at Inferno's artwork. Cool, so here is Inferno's artwork. He is the Cultist of Flames. So he's got a big flamethrower as well as the face mask that's quite quintessential, I guess, to those post-apocalyptic worlds where everything has gone to heck and there's just randoms running around with flamethrowers burning everything that's moving because that's zombies. But yeah, that's his artwork. So thanks very much to Dream for passing this one through. I don't actually own Inferno, so I do rely on the community a little bit for some of these images. So yeah, that's Inferno's artwork. He's a bit of a tall, lanky boy. He's got long legs. Like, look how long those legs are, and his arms. Like, I don't know, it's just out of proportion, I guess. Anyway, that's his artwork. He's a lanky boy. But yeah, that's who he is. So feel free to pause it if you wish. Otherwise, let's jump back across and we can take a bit more of a look at the rest of his skill. And of course, when I say skill, I first mean family bonus. Inferno is a member of the Raiders family, which means he has a 10% chance to trigger the Radiation Storm effect. This effect, once triggered, will deal 198 poison damage to all enemies over 3 turns, and will give 285 healing back to all allies over 3 turns as well. There is also a stat bonus, so we get a plus 2, 4, 6, or 8% attack bonus for having 2, 3, 4, or 5 unique Raiders family members in the battle at one go. 2 things to really note here. Number 1, the Radiation Storm is not requiring multiple heroes. It is inherent to every individual in the Raiders family. So Inferno on his own, fire his skill, 10% chance to trigger the radiation bonus. Simple as that. Second thing to note is that the stat bonus does require unique heroes. So it can't be getting a 2% attack bonus for having 2 copies of Inferno in the fight. It's got to be 2 different heroes, like combining Inferno with Richter or Inferno with Whipster as 2 different examples. On a personal level, Inferno comes in with 741 attack, 741 defense, and 1,483 HP. So really, no skewing whatsoever. A little tiny bit maybe going from the HP across to the defense and attack stats, but ultimately he's pretty middle of the road. There's not really too much unbalance going on there. I will mention as well his power itself. So he comes in with 726 power. This is quite high for a challenge event hero. The OGs were 683 or thereabouts, and the intermediates, the ones that were released in 2022, they were about 710-ish. So coming in with 726 is quite high, particularly seeing as the most recent heroes of the month are only just a little bit above this in the 730s range. So quite high power for a hero that was released a year ago now. All power is, though, is it's a representation of their base stats. So more power means more base stats, and that's effectively power creep in a nutshell. So moving on from that, his charge speed is set to 63, which is fast speed and requires 9 tiles to charge. Speed break happens at 65, which is a +2 speed improvement. You can do that using any of the red speed guns in the game. You've got a 4-star gun, the Tigger Happy, that gives you +7. You've also got 2 5-star options, so either the Chekhov SVK or Firewing Trig. Both of those are +9 speed guns. So yeah, very easy to get that. The double speed break is at 72 speed, which requires +9 speed improvement. And would you look at that? +9 is the same as 2 of the red speed guns we've got available. So you can double speed break Inferno using either the Firewing Trig, which is a weapon of the month, or using the Chekhov SVK, which is a vanilla gun that you can create in the weaponsmith. The class node, as a result, not really relevant. It is sufficient to get the first break on its own, allowing you to use potentially a different weapon on Inferno if you're happy getting just the first break and maybe want to put a dodge gun on him. Alternatively, you can get the double speed break with a +7 or a +8 weapon. So if you did only have the Tigger Happy 4-star gun, which gives you +7, you can still get that double speed break from 9 tiles down to 7 using that 4-star gun on him. So potentially relevant, but if you've got a +9 gun, not really relevant, which is fortunate because it is a +20 location on the class tree. On the topic of his class, he is a member of the Engineer class, which grants him the chance to summon a turret minion after receiving damage from any source. Turret minion itself comes in with 15% HP and 18% attack inherited from Inferno. It's a pretty beefy minion at the end of the day, 15% HP, and the benefit is that it can be triggered from any damage source. It can be skill, tiles, other minions, anything that deals damage to Inferno can actually proc that turret minion. Downside is it's only able to proc once per turn, regardless of how many instances of damage Inferno actually receives. By way of an actual emblem path, I personally would recommend going an attack path to basically further enhance his damage output. You could make an argument to go defense and HP to really increase the survival aspect of him, to focus on the minion destruction and the dispel. But for me, I'd probably go the attack path and just be done with it, essentially. So what this looks like, I'm going to pull up a copy of Melter. Ignore the fact that it is Melter. This is now Inferno. So what this looks like, if you go the attack path, I would probably focus on HP as the secondary thing, because obviously minion from the turret. So we are going to pick up the attack with the HP on that side. Then we go attack, attack again, attack once more, attack with HP, and then call it a day basically there at +18. You might go the +19, which is a defense improvement just for some added stats, but ultimately +18, if not back here at +16, that's probably about as far as I would honestly go. So that's the attack path. Pause it if you wish, but otherwise I'm going to demonstrate the defense HP route. So the defense HP route is primarily focused on giving him added survival. Because he is an engineer class hero, you would prioritize the HP over the defense when you've got to choose between the two, like we see here on the first branch. So what this looks like, sorry, I've just cleared it, is we are going to go the HP route to start with, defense and HP next. Then it becomes a bit of a toss-up or a tight choice here, because on one side you've got HP, but you've also got the healing node, and the healing node is stone cold useless. So what I would actually recommend doing is taking the attack and defense, because then you actually get 2 useful effects as opposed to 1 useful effect. After that, we carry on picking up the HP nodes and then just getting up down there at +18. Again, +19 defense stats, so does add added survival, but is again a fair number of emblems. So if you're like me, you've got a absolute crap load of engineer emblems, in which case getting +19 would be worthwhile. It's a good use for those emblems. But I don't actually have Inferno, so this doesn't apply to me. Either way, that's the 2 paths, so feel free to pause it, rewind it if you wish, but otherwise, let's jump back across and we can take a look at his special skill. So his special skill is titled Purifying Flame, and at level 10 skill and 63 charge speed, it will deal 265% damage to the target, with minor damage being dealt to nearby enemies. It will then destroy all minions from the target and nearby enemies, and then apply a burn ailment to the target and nearby enemies for 351 damage over 3 turns. Finally, it will then dispel all the buffs from the target and nearby enemies. So quite a number of things going on there, but before we jump in and start taking a look at the damage component, I want to explain the phrase minor damage first. So what this means, minor damage is half the percentage listed in their special skill, and that's what's dealt to the nearby enemy. So in the case of Inferno, he is going to deal 265% damage to the main target of his special skill, and to the nearby enemies, he's going to deal 132.5% damage to them. Now, because of how the damage calculation works, the nearby enemies end up actually only taking roughly 42% of the calculated damage, as opposed to the 50% of the skill damage that they take. So it just dulls it down a little bit because of how the damage calc actually procs. So because of this drastic reduction in the damage that they take. I tend to consider minor damage as quote-unquote splash damage, and then compare and classify these heroes as snipers, as the damage is predominantly directed against a single target and drops off significantly on the nearby enemies. So with that in mind, let's take a bit more of a detailed look at the damage component of his special skill. So as always with these heroes, damage is relatively easy to calculate, but because of the variability in the calculation, I like to compare heroes based on their attack power. This just removes that variability and is, in the end of the day, analogous to their final damage output anyway. So attack power is just a hero's attack stat, 741, multiplied by the percentage in their skill, 265, and you can see that in the case of an Inferno, this comes out as a speed normalized attack power per tile of 218, which lands him in 10th spot of all of the the red snipers in the game. So 10 of 17. It's in the bottom half of the options. It's round about the middle though at the end of the day. But yeah, he does also, if we expanded that list out to include every element, he comes in at 58 of the 86 options available across all elements. So not a great sniper. When you look at him in that regard, yes, he does have the splash damage, but there are others that have got splash damage as well that are actually better than him. Not so much in red, but in some of the other elements, there are some very, very good splash damage dealing heroes, and Inferno just doesn't really keep up with them at the end of the day. So he is better than the red ones, though. I'll give him that. He's better than Blockbuster, Hudson, and Coney, all of whom are not really known for their damage dealing, strangely enough. But yeah, that's where Inferno ranks. You can have a look at some of the other options in there, but really, at the end of the day, Inferno is a little bit different to a lot of these heroes because his damage is actually pseudo-increased by the minion destruction when those actually exist, but also by the burn element that sits in his skill. So we'll move on to have a look at those two elements of his skill, starting with the minion destruction. So literally, it reads, destroys all minions from target enemies. Full stop. Boom. Bash. And it does exactly what it says, right? Any minions that are on the target and nearby enemies are immediately removed. It doesn't matter how many minions are in play. It doesn't matter how much health they have. They are just gone. It does occur in the skill after the direct damage component. So what this means is that damage is somewhat wasted if the target has minions, because you're dealing damage to the minions first, they absorb all of that damage, and then you destroy minions afterwards. So it would be much nicer if the two skills were reversed in their order. So it destroys minions, then deals damage, because what that means is that none of the damage from Inferno would be wasted on a minion that's going to get removed anyway. It would go directly to the enemy hero's HP bar. So yeah, his speed, he is a bit fast for a really great minion destroyer. Usually, for fast speed heroes like Inferno, particularly if he's a double speed broken one, the enemy heroes are not likely to have charged their special skill, which means that by the time you charge Inferno, you are going to be sort of sitting waiting a little bit, potentially, to see if any enemy heroes are going to generate minions. So it does kind of disrupt your battle flow a little bit. But yeah, at the end of the day, there are only 5 minion destroying heroes in the game at the moment. You've got, obviously, Inferno, you've then got Ember, Wei Sheng, Ramhorn, Royden, and obviously Inferno. So 5 options in total. Inferno was the last of these to be added. All the other ones are much earlier in their additions. There did used to be one extra one, which was Mare Vanalia, but her skill was rejigged back in December 2021. So yeah, it's a good effect. I do like it. It is becoming probably more useful today because you've got heroes like Pulse that are popping up more on defense teams and ones like Venus. It sort of went out of fashion a little bit when Nima stopped being a meta defense hero, but it's kind of coming back into play a bit again. So it is nice to see it there. The other parts of his skill, we've got the burn element. So burn, the target and nearby enemies receive 351 damage over 3 turns. Usual stuff to say about DOT. So obviously it is an ailment, so it needs to be landing on them. It can then obviously be cleansed, withstood, resisted, reflected, or anything like that, as is the case with all of the DOTs. The other stuff to say with the DOT is turn-based damage, so is subject to enhancement like we have from Whipstar, dampening like on the zombie family, or converted to healing like Variant Peeker and the mutant family can do. There isn't much else to say, really. 351, it is higher than normal, I guess, in its quantity. Normal for a 5-star hero is 309, so it's 117 damage per turn compared to the standard of 109 damage per turn. And yeah, so effectively, it just acts as a bolster to his mediocre direct damage, which is nice. Because, yeah, otherwise, with his damage on his own, he's pretty poor. Yeah. Final part of his skill is the Dispel, so removes buffs from the target and nearby enemies. Dispel is a really great effect. The Raiders portal is actually quite strongly loaded with DOA Dispellers. There are actually 3 of the DOA Dispellers are in the Raiders portal, which is quite a high saturation. So in total, there's not many of them. There are only 20 AoE Dispellers in the game as a whole. Of those, 4 of them are 4-star heroes and the other 16 are 5 stars. So the fact that you've got 3 out of 16 are in one portal is a pretty good odds or pretty good rate to summon for it in this portal. Yeah, incredibly versatile effect on any hero. It gives you so many uses in the game. Any heroes that are reliant on buffs like Hypernova or attack buffs like you see on Sapphire or anything like that, those are all basically just removed from the equation, which is really, really nice. The main downside really to the Dispel on Inferno, and it's the case with all Dispellers basically, is that the enemies that he hits are the only ones affected, and that his Dispel is listed after the damage is dealt. So what it means is that heroes with counterattacks or defense buffs and all of that, the damage output is ultimately occurring first, which means that you're going to be having either reduced damage or taking the counterattack, as the case may be. It's not an issue that is unique to Inferno. It's the case with pretty much every Dispeller. In fact, there are only 5 that do Dispels from heroes they don't actually have to deal damage to. Specifically, they are Pantera, Thalia, and Rex, as well as Ryoko and Variant Throttle. So, yeah. I think overall, Inferno is a hero who probably has a lot of hidden uses and is probably overlooked a lot of the time in terms of those uses. His direct damage is pretty poor. You can't really say too much more about that. I'd say that's probably one of, if it is probably his biggest shortcoming is how poor his direct damage is. But a lot of his secondary effects all make up for that shortcoming. The burn specifically is really good stopgap on direct damage because instead of it being a poor damage and damage on its own, it's got poor damage with turn-based damage coming afterwards. So it really adds, it roughly ends up being double to 1.5 times the damage that he ends up doing because of that burn ailment. The Minion Destruction is really great as well. It gives you a lot of strategic uses. And again, it goes towards enhancing his pseudo damage output because it can destroy all of the minions that are in play on those targeted enemies, regardless of how chunky they are. And then finally, you've obviously got the Dispel. Dispel gives you so much strategic use for him because you can use him and time him to target specific enemies that are going to be very buff heavy and then just neuter them out of the game. Or out of that fight. So for Inferno's grading, I'm going to give him a B+ for War and Raid attacks. As I said, I think he's got a lot of sneaky uses that you might not consider on first glance, and well worth including into your teams, either as an off-color Dispeller or as part of a primary stack as well. For the War Machines, I'm going to give him probably a B-. I don't see him being a very good War Machine hero. There's not really anything in his skill that would make him a good War Machine hero, beyond having better than average stats in terms of his overall attack. For the events, I'm going to give him a C+. He's got target and nearby with minor damage. So yes, he's dealing damage to 3 enemies, but the bulk of his damage comes from the burn ailment, which is not necessarily fantastic for eventing. On the War and Raid defenses, I'm going to give him a B-. I think his best spot is probably in the flank position. But even then, because of his speed and the way his effect works, he's not really doing anything for his allies. You could probably put him in the wing position and put a better suited hero that suffers more going out to wing and put them at flank instead. So an okay option, I guess, but I'm going to give him a B- for War and Raid defenses. In our 3 tournament settings, and the Bloody Battle, there is no form of healing permitted other than minion makers, and so because of this, people tend to stack more minions onto their defense teams. So as a result, I am going to give him an A- for Bloody Battle attack and a B- for Bloody Battle defense. You've also got the fact that he does the burn ailment, which is quite useful, particularly seeing as there are less cleansers typically in the Bloody Battle tournaments, because a lot of them are linked to the healers, and healers are obviously very much reduced. We then have the buff booster tournaments. Obviously, buffs are very much in demand, and the fact that he is a Dispeller gives him a lot of uses here. So I'm going to give him an A- for buff booster attack and a B grade for buff booster defense. Finally, the last charge tournament is the charge attack one, where his speed is improved from 63 to 65, which is almost nothing. So I'm going to leave him at a B+ for charge tournament attack and a B- for charge tournament defense. So overall, that comes out as being a B grade for his overall attack and a B- for his overall defense grade. And that concludes the content for this review of Inferno. As always, these are just my personal thoughts and opinions on these heroes. I do value your thoughts and feedback, so please do feel free to jump down to the comments section, leave me a note. I try to read and respond as much as possible. If you did enjoy the content of this video and found it to be good, useful, helpful, feel free to like the video, subscribe to my channel, but most importantly as well, share the video around, because chances are, if this sort of thing is useful for yourself, it's also going to be useful to the other people you play with as well. Thank you once again for tuning in and joining me. I do hope I will see you again soon, but until then, good luck, stay safe, and happy gaming. Cheers, bye!